Hi, friends. Welcome to dispatch number 5 of the Sienna sessions. First, real quick apologies. I usually try to get these out Tuesday or Wednesday. This is Thursday, and I have to confess, I was recording an interview on Tuesday that I hoped to bring you. I'm not going to be able to get it to you this week. I'm just going to take a little bit of editing. So just be excited for an interesting interview, and hopefully I'll have more interviews coming up. But I wanted to get something out real quick so I could say I didn't skip this week or miss this week, even if it is a couple days late. So there you go. That's why and what's going on. But I wanted to share with you 2 stories real quick and a bit of wisdom that I think about. These 2 stories I start thinking about right now, and then these 2 stories always make me think about this bit of wisdom. So I want to share the stories with you and the bit of wisdom because maybe it'll help you. I don't know. But it's on my mind, so it's going to be on the video. First story is this. I grew up in Howe, Idaho. Technically, I grew up 6 miles north of Howe, Idaho. And in Howe itself, the town proper, there are less than 30 people. Any given time, maybe 20 to 30 people. So it's a tiny place. Now imagine I live 6 miles north of that, literally in the middle of nowhere. There's a couple mountains, a beautiful place, great setting to grow up, farm land all around, two mountain ranges running right past my house, but middle of nowhere. And my mom in November would drag out the Christmas lights to decorate the house. And my mom loved to go to the nines, to the hilt with these things. We had big pine trees that run in front of, we have big pine trees that run in front of the house and that people drive by. And so my mom wanted to make sure all those were covered, and they were tall. And so we would have to, my dad would have to bring the tractor around with a bucket on the front end, a front end loader. And he'd have to put either me or my mom in the bucket, and we'd have to go right up to the top of these tall pine trees and put the lights on, the fence, the eaves, everything. And I have to confess, inwardly, I would grumble and complain. And even outwardly, it would show up a little bit. I was, why are we doing this? It didn't make sense to me. Who were we doing it for? Nobody around. You know, closest neighbor almost a mile away. And that was rare. That's rare for Howe, because neighbor within a mile is pretty rare thing, especially in the part where we lived, especially on that road, and nobody driving by, hardly anyone. So it didn't make sense to me. Who were we doing this for? All right. So that's story number 1. Story number 2. You'll recognize this if you put on events or plan events or coordinate events. If you're pastor, teacher, principal, or whatever, you're putting on things, you'll probably recognize this story a little bit. We do, and a lot of churches do, a longest night service or a blue Christmas service. And it happens on the literal longest night of the year, December 20th, 21st, leading up to Christmas. And the idea is that in the middle of all this hustle and bustle and holly and jolly, good times and happiness, to stop and recognize that there are people who are not in those spirits. There are people wrestling with depression and grief and anxiety and anger and frustration and loss and separation. And it's a tough time to go through it while everyone else is, doing whatever else, and you're here. So it's a time to give voice to that, to let people come together and find solidarity in that. So we were planning, a couple of years ago, we were planning one of these gatherings, and we wanted to be just great. And the night of the gathering, 2 people showed up, a mother and a daughter, right? And we had to set everything aside because it wasn't going to work with just 2 people, what we had planned. We had, bigger group in mind when we were making our plans. And so it was going to be awkward with just 2 people. And we had to set it aside and do something different where we just sat down and talked with each other. I know. Who does that anymore? No, I'm just kidding. But we sat down. It was more personal. It was very meaningful. But you know what? Preparing for it put me in the right frame of mind to just be present for the people. Even though we had to set aside everything we worked hard on, we used a bit or 2 of it. But you know what? It helped. It helped to prepare for what we needed to do that night, which was to just be present for these 2 people. But still a little bit of frustration, right? Because you go out of this planning, you're making this thing, and what was the point? And this happens a lot for, people who are putting on things and creating things and making things for people to view or be a part of or participate in or enjoy or read. And you might wonder, what's the point if nobody sees it or if nobody shows up? And you might be tempted to not go full bore on what you're making. So I want to share with you a little bit of wisdom from an author named John Green, who I highly respect. You can Google some of his books, find his videos. And one of his videos, he shared a little bit of advice that I want to pass on to you. It helps me when I'm thinking those thoughts. Like, what's the point? It's all meaningless. Is it even making any impact? Is it doing anything? But here's what he says. He gives this advice to people when they ask the question, basically, if I want to write, what should I be doing? And this is the bit of advice and wisdom he gives. He says this: don't make stuff because you want to make money. It will never make you enough money. Don't make stuff because you want to get famous. You'll never feel famous enough. Instead, make gifts for people and work hard on making those gifts in the hopes that those people will notice. Now, maybe they will notice how hard you worked, but maybe they won't. If they don't notice, I know it's frustrating, but ultimately that doesn't change a thing. Because your responsibility is not to the people you're making the gift for, but to the gift itself. Your responsibility is to the gift itself. Look, when you pour yourself into making something, you're going to get better at it. You're going to find better ways to do it. You're going to get more creative and more inspiration when you do these things. And yes, it might feel pointless if nobody notices. It might feel frustrating if it gets no reaction from anybody, or if you poured yourself into it and nobody's even around. But you know what? Ultimately, your responsibility is to the gift itself. Hang those Christmas lights. Make that thing. Write that poem. Write that book. Craft that talk. Who cares if anybody shows up? Because your responsibility is not to those people and not for those reactions. Ultimately, your responsibility is to the gift itself. To the gift that you have, that you're making, and to get better at, and all those things that go along that happen when you do it. Your responsibility is to the gift itself. All right, thank you so much for watching. Share this video if it's helped you at all. Make some comments on it either on the YouTube channel or on Facebook or on other social media. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and especially if you want to get notifications when one of these comes out, hit that bell on the YouTube page, wherever it is. But I thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.